3, 2, 1.
Good evening. I'm Ruth Dinowitz, a member of the League of Women Voters of Albany County, and I will be the moderator this evening for the Candidates Forum. Tonight, we will have candidates who are running for the office of Highway Superintendent as well as Town Supervisor. The League of Women Voters is happy to do this debate again, and we're delighted co-sponsoring with the town of Bethlehem, who has given us this space, a little different this year than other years, as well as the Spotlight News, who is live streaming this, and also will be keeping it and forwarding it another time before the election. There is no audience tonight. All of us are sitting appropriate distance apart, vaccinated, and our choice to do this is to protect the health and safety of the public. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization, and we focus a lot on voter service. We do study issues that are local and state and federal, but our focus is this, and we are a nonpartisan organization. We do not support or oppose any candidates or any political party. Just to keep you up to date and make sure you remember, the election is on Tuesday, November 2nd. The polls are going to be open from 6 in the morning to 9 at night. There is early voting again this year, October 23rd to the 31st. And those of you who are still in need of an absentee ballot, you have till the 18th, which is next week. If tonight doesn't satisfy you with all the answers, because these candidates are not going to have an answering part, there is a wonderful site online. It's called vote411.org, and just go to it and you will get information not only about tonight's debate, but also about other candidates and other offices that are being voted on November 2nd. Now, the League has a variety of formats that we use for debates. The candidates here and later ones for supervisors have agreed to this format. What we are going to do for those who are now running for the highway superintendent, each of these gentlemen will have up to 5 minutes to make a statement. There will be no questions, then they will leave, and the candidates running for supervisor will come in. That part of the evening is going to be a little different. The format for that is each of the candidates will have an opportunity for a 2-minute opening statement. They will then have a minute and a half to respond to questions. And these questions came from the community. Many of you probably sent them in, and they were opened up and collated the other night. And then the supervisor candidates will have 1 minute for closing statements. A little different this year, it alternates, is that the candidates for supervisors will each get 2 red cards, and those cards will allow them to have an extra minute if they want to extend their time to either answer a question or to concentrate and perhaps say something that their opponent that they didn't agree with. And happily, we have a timer tonight who will keep us all on schedule so that we will all not overdo our time. And that's Deb Liebman, and I appreciate her coming. She will be holding up cards for the candidates and myself so that we don't overrun. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to the 2 candidates who are running for highway superintendent. Mr. Dorsey is on my immediate right, and further down is Mr. Anastasi. They have picked lots for their statements, and Mr. Dorsey has chosen number 1. So I'll ask him to begin and start with his statement. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Mark Dorsey, the current highway superintendent. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters and the Spotlight for hosting this event. Thank you to the outstanding Highway Department for their hard work, especially in these trying and uncertain times. Thank you to the BDC, Working Families Party, Capital Women, North Atlantic State Regional Council of Carpenters for endorsing. Thank you to my family. The goal of my first year was to hit the ground running. COVID hit us. The pandemic made the Highway Department completely rethink every task that would have been routine to keep the employees safe, yet still provide services to you and your neighbors in Bethlehem. In the spring of 2020, despite the challenges of social distancing, shutdowns, CDC requirements, we still had obligations to meet. During this time, we completed the expansion project for the compost and food scrap facility. This project had to be completed in 2020, or the town would have lost state grant funding. This project should have been completed before I took office. Bethlehem now has the largest and most comprehensive compost facility in the greater capital region, and the only municipal facility in Albany County to accept food scraps. This is important because compost significantly reduces methane emissions from landfills. The pandemic also caused staffing shortages for the highway department. Previous years, we would supplement our staff with 4 to 6 Job Corps students, along with 12 to 14 seasonal hires. These additional employees round out our staff during our busiest season. Instead of bringing on possible 20 extra staff, we only were able to hire 4. Even with the staffing shortages, we were able to pave almost 12 miles of road, double the number of miles paved in 2018 and 19 combined. This enabled the town to bring in over $500,000 in state funding. During the same time, we had completely reconstructed the multi-sports field at the town park due to the fact that it was installed improperly before I came on board. There was issues with drainage and the growth of the grass. We also continued yard waste pickup. The highway department picked up 2 years worth of yard waste in 2020 due to the October 5th windstorm. Right after the October windstorm, leaf season pickup started. We were able to clear the town of loose leaves before one of the largest snowstorms in the history of the town. The highway department literally worked night and day to make our streets and sidewalks safe, while other towns and cities were crippled for days by the amount of snow and the duration of the storm. Bethlehem streets were clear the next day. In 2021, COVID was still with us. With rising infection rates, residents with children were dealing with shortened school days or remote school. Town hall was closed. The public employees were working from home. Deemed essential staff, the highway department was still out at work and providing services to our town, even though we were still short-staffed. The first part of 2021, we were asked by Albany County Sheriff's Department to help set up a drive-through pod site for vaccinations. We were then asked again to assist, this time by the State Nurses Association, to provide them with the same type of drive-through vaccination site. This was the first for the highway department, helping to deliver needed health care. As far as I know, we're the only highway department to do this. This past spring, we saw our annual spring cleanup as well as hazardous waste day. This is first since COVID struck. In order to save town money, the highway department took on the town fueling station project. The town saved over $200,000 by using in-house labor. We added fuel pumps, fuel pad, and modern-day computer system to track our fuel usage. Before we began paving, we managed to install just under 1,500 foot of new sidewalk and continued this fall installing more sidewalk. In 2021, we had an ambitious goal to pave 20 miles. To date, we are close to our goal with over 17 miles of new blacktop road. For a municipality to pave this amount of road is unheard of. In paving this number of roads in 2021, the town will be able to recoup over $600,000 of state funding. In closing, I've been a resident of the town of Bethlehem my whole life. I love this town, I respect my crew, I value my staff. Together we get work done. And my goal and mission to provide best services to the town by streamlining and being proficient in the manner in which we do work. I want the Bethlehem Highway Department to be the example for other municipalities. I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank the voters for giving me the opportunity to be the highway superintendent. And most of all, I want to thank the Bethlehem Highway Department for all their hard work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now, Mr. Anastasia, please.
Good evening. My name is John Tiger Anastasi, and I am running for Bethlehem Highway Superintendent. I would like to thank the sponsors of tonight's event, the Spotlight and the League of Women Voters. Having held this position in the past, I have the job-related experience, firsthand knowledge of the most important qualifications a candidate needs to get his job done properly and keep things running smoothly. A lot has changed in the highway department in the past 2 years since I've been gone, and sadly not for the better. The current highway superintendent remains mostly in his office and sees his role as purely an administrative position. During my tenure as highway superintendent, I prepared budgets, working closely with our town comptroller. I ensured that spending was on track and within budget amounts. I made certain that reports and paperwork were always completed timely and accurately, and that our vehicles and equipment were kept in working order. The superintendent must possess the highest ethical and moral standards. These are traits which I pride myself on possessing and traits which I will never compromise. Did my opponent demonstrate good moral and ethical standards when he sold town equipment without following the required policies and procedures that are established? This position requires good leadership skills and judgment. I always made myself available day and night to handle any emergencies that arose. Like most emergency situations, these situations are not planned for and require tremendous leadership and guidance. During the time I held the position, I was always available for each emergency and reported directly to the scene to witness firsthand what was needed and required. Leadership abilities and communication skills are essential and critical to having a well-run and effective highway department. While I was superintendent, I worked closely with all of the departments on our wonderful town possesses, and we always worked together as a team. We supported each other and oftentimes shared resources to get the job done, resources to get the job done in the most efficient and cost-effective manner possible. Can my opponent say the same thing? Does he maintain a good and close relationship with all the departments in town, or does he work independently, listening only to himself? While I was highway superintendent in 2018 and 19, I was successful in bringing and maintaining much of the work back to town employees. The highway workers were learning new job skills, and the town was saving precious taxpayer funds by not outsourcing work. We successfully installed much-needed sidewalks throughout the town while still maintaining the roads that needed repaving and staying within our budget. Can Mr. Dorsey say the same after going over budget close to $200,000? Employees trust and respect the boss that work hand in hand with them. While I was superintendent, I respected and followed the guidance and advice of our town engineers, comptroller, and other departments I work closely with. If they advised me not to pave a particular street or informed me that a street did not need repaving at this time, I listened and dedicated my resources elsewhere. If they advised me about a procurement process of financial decision, I listened and naturally took their advice. My opponent, on the other hand, does not work with or follow advice from other town professionals and continues to do things his way, ultimately wasting valuable taxpayer funds and resources. That's our money. I will not simply sit in my office and alienate myself from the rest of the town departments. I will be patrolling the roads and managing my employees, particularly during winter months, to ensure the roads are clear and safe. The town of Bethlehem employees are a very dedicated, loyal, and hardworking group of employees that work professionally. These are the men and women that the highway superintendent leads and directs to get the job done. These are the individuals with the operational skills and experience to continue to maintain the high level of service that you, the residents, have come to expect and deserve. When you go to the polls on November 2nd, choose the leader that will continue to lead this great group of employees. Thank you to everybody.
I thank both of you gentlemen for coming tonight. Thank you for tuning in. And don't forget November 2nd. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Back in 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your coming. Thank you. Oh, I'm so sorry. So this. I Here, you can have, here, you can have this, I have another.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
You can use this as well. Thank you.
Oh, I apologize.
No, I don't have that.
Okay, that's fine. And you gentlemen both know that you have these?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm very sorry.
Yes, sir. I mean, yes, ma'am.
You want me to take the, is that what you want? Okay.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Obviously, right. Correct?
Yep.
Okay.
That's hot.
Yes,
sir.
got it. Hi. Good evening. I'm Ruth Dinowitz, a member of the League of Women Voters of Albany County, and I'm going to be your moderator for tonight's Candidates Night. This part of the evening, we have the two candidates who are running for office of supervisor of the town. The league would like to thank the Chamber of Commerce for co-sponsoring this with us, and also the Spotlight News. We appreciate all of you tuning in. We are at the town hall, but we have no audience with us tonight. I would like to just reiterate what the ground rules are for this part in case you missed it at the beginning. Each of the candidates will have an opportunity for a 2-minute opening statement. Each of them will have an opportunity up to 1.5 minutes to respond to each of the questions that you have all sent in, and we have collated for this evening. And they will have an opportunity for a 1-minute closing statement. In asking the questions, I will alternate first with one candidate will answer first, and then we will just go back and forth. Each of the candidates also has 2 cards, 2 red cards, indicating to me that they would like to have an extended 1 period to respond to a comment perhaps that their opponent made, or to elaborate on an issue that they want to talk more about. Each of them can use the card twice. And so we had picked lots at the beginning on who would speak first with the opening statement. So I will ask Mr. Heiser to begin tonight with his opening statement. Thank you.
I will start by thanking the League of Women Voters of Albany County and the Spotlight for sponsoring this forum. It's vitally important that voters hear from the candidates, so you are providing an important service to town voters. I also welcome everyone who is live streaming this event. I look forward to answering your questions, and I thank Mr. Van Leuven for being here as well. I am a lifelong resident of Bethlehem. I moved here with my family at the age of 1. And except for the times when I've gone away to college and graduate school, I have been here ever since. And I'm also a proud graduate of the Bethlehem Central School District. I love this town. I've made many good friends here and have accumulated many great memories. That's why it pains me to see a number of indicators that show things are going sideways here in town. Violent crime has gone up by more than 50% since 2017. Our taxes have gone up, but I haven't seen any commensurate improvement in services. And the town board is known for its secrecy and lack of transparency. There are many in this town who believe their voices aren't being heard, and that the current board doesn't really care to know what their concerns are. As supervisor, I aim to change that. 2 of the most pressing concerns living anywhere is safety and affordability. I plan to make those concerns my highest priorities. I look forward to a spirited exchange of ideas this evening so that voters can make an informed choice when they cast their ballots, whether it be at the polls on November 2nd, during the early voting period that starts a week from Saturday, or by absentee ballot. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you. Mr. Van Leuven, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm David Van Leuven, and I'm your town supervisor. I want to start by saying thank you to the League of Women Voters, the Bethlehem Chamber of Commerce, and the Spotlight for hosting tonight's conversation. I also want to thank everyone who has given me the opportunity to serve as town supervisor for the last 4 years, and I very much hope that you'll support my efforts to serve for another 2 years because I love this town and I love this job. When I wake up in the morning, the radio news often accosts me with nonstop negativity that has beset our politics at the national level. It's depressing, it's demoralizing, it can be infuriating, and in many cases it leaves us feeling powerless. Then I go to work and I see my neighbors and I get my perspective back. At the local level, we are neighbors first and foremost, members of a community who all want pretty much the same things and who are willing to work together to achieve them. We all want clean water, good roads, safe neighborhoods, fun parks, and all the other things that make Bethlehem, Bethlehem. We don't care about national polarization. We just want to work together to get good things done. Bethlehem is filled with great people and great businesses, and we are all very, very lucky to live and work here. And I have been very lucky to serve as town supervisor, and I hope that you will trust me and vote on November 2nd to give me another 2 years to serve.
I thank you very much. I'd also like to explain that to my left is a lady who is putting up cards so that our candidates keep within the structure of time. So if I look off to the left, it's because I too am checking if I am keeping the right framework. So I have all the questions that you in town have sent. I live in a different town, so perhaps some of these questions, if I stumble over them, it's because I am not dealing with the same issues as you. So the first question I will ask, and I will start with Mr. Heiser. This is the first question. Which recommendations of the Police Reform and Reinvention Committee would you work to implement to make Bethlehem a welcoming and safe community for all who live, work, or visit our town, regardless of race, ethnicity, and gender identity? And are there any that you would not implement?
As I said in my opening statement, I'm worried about the increase in crime in this town. Violent crime has gone up 54% since 2017, and those are statistics that come from the FBI Uniform Crime Report. And in reading the police reform report, the one recommendation that stuck out to me the most was the recommendation to equip our officers with body cameras. I think it's vitally important that they have body cameras for two reasons. First, it'll protect them, but it'll also protect us. So that was the key recommendation from that report that struck the biggest chord with me. So I will work to implement that. It struck me also reading through the report that there were a lot of recommendations to create committees to study things further. So it seems to me that these issues have already been studied to death. They don't need another committee or another commission to do so anymore. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Van Lupen, would you respond?
Yes, so the Police Reform and Reinvention collaborative effort, I think, was particularly notable in Bethlehem because we took it very, very seriously. We had 31 hours of community public forums to explore a wide range of topics, an exploration that was done as a partnership between the community and the police department. So the recommendations that came out of the plan are representative of the interests of the community and the police department. And one of the biggest challenges that we saw in this and that we highlighted as a need is better data collection. There are a lot of misunderstandings about who our police department is, what our police department does. We had people in the beginning saying that we need to stop our police department from beating and murdering people. We clearly showed with the data that were available that that's not even close to what's happening. We have an outstanding police force. But we also saw patterns in the data that indicated that there were some potential disproportionate policing that we needed to explore further. And so we have committed to and invested in a new data collection system that will allow us to get better data faster. I'm also very proud of our chief of police. I think she's doing an outstanding job, and I was very proud to have had a role in bringing her on board.
Thank you. And for the second question, I'd like to start with you. Okay, the question is this. In your view, what role do locally owned and operated small businesses play in the character and livability of a town like Bethlehem?
Well, at the heart of every thriving community, you find vibrant commercial districts. And Bethlehem has vibrant commercial districts. Slingerlands, Delmar, Glenmont, Ellesmere. Small businesses are the heart and soul of any community, just as individual residential neighborhoods are as well. The small businesses that I see in Bethlehem not only provide services that benefit all of us, but they are community centers that are places that support our community. And I see that whether it's getting a sandwich at Losie's Deli down in Selkirk, whether it was at a ribbon cutting for inspirational dance in Glenmont. The Fifth Corner in the Four Corners is a fantastic addition to our town. Root and Rind, which is a new vegetarian coffee shop that's right off the rail trail in Glenmont, is terrific, as is Bake for You. Small businesses are a priority for us. We just got our fourth $200,000 grant from the state that we can use to provide small microenterprise loans to help businesses grow or get started. And we are in the closing process of hiring a new economic development coordinator to support our businesses and to bring new businesses in as old businesses go.
Thank you. Mr. Heisler.
Can you please repeat the question?
Surely. In your view, what role do locally owned and operated small businesses play in the character and livability of a town like Bethlehem?
Vitally important. In fact, when I was growing up, I worked for small businesses here in town. During summers at college, one summer I worked at Hoagie's Pizzeria and Restaurant. They were a small pizzeria across from the old Tailgate restaurant over in Slingerland. So I worked there for a summer. One summer during college, I worked at Curtis Lumber. Not necessarily a small business, but they're not a large business either. But so I've had experience working for small employers in town. And I think they're vitally important to the health and well-being of the community and to the character of the community. But they need to be supported. And a lot of the conversations I had with business owners in this town, I get the sense that they're really not being listened to by the community. And one example is the road diet. Many business owners tell me that they're not in support of narrowing Delaware Avenue from 2 lanes in each direction to 1 lane in each direction, because they think that that'll hurt their businesses. So it's one thing to say, yes, I support small businesses. I think they're important to the community, but the actions speak louder than words. And I don't think the business owners are seeing action. They are hearing words, and I will change that.
Thank you. And the next question, I will start with you, Mr. Heisler. The question, it reads this way. As new housing becomes more expensive, what do you believe our town should do to ensure housing is affordable for working people, middle-income people, and for seniors who are on fixed incomes?
Unfortunately, what we're seeing lately is the dream of home ownership is out of the reach of many people, largely due to some really poor policy decisions at the federal level that are making building materials more expensive. I saw a statistic the other day that the median home price has gone up $50,000 between August 2020 and August 2021. The cost of heating fuel, the cost of heating fuels has gone up 21% since last year. So unfortunately, because it's, like I said, some of the things we're seeing at the federal level, home ownership and rentals are out of the reach of many people. So what would I do? Well, there are several things. First of all, I would make sure that their property taxes aren't overly burdensome. How do you do that? Well, you spread out the tax burden over a greater section of the community. So that means attracting more commercial enterprises. That means attracting more small businesses, so that tax burden is spread over a larger base. That would be the prime way that I would make sure home ownership and even renting property in this community is in the reach of more people.
Thank you. And could you respond, Mr. Van Leuven?
Sure. So there are a few challenges that I've observed in community conversations and discussions about affordable housing. And the core challenge I'm seeing in a lot of them is this deep misunderstanding about what affordable housing is and who lives in affordable housing. There's a view among some that affordable housing brings in crime and brings in people who don't pay taxes. That was on an unfortunate platform that was put up and then fortunately quickly taken down. But the reality is that affordable housing is for teachers, it's for people who work in our highway department, it can be for police officers, our parents when they're downsizing. And so we need to have the community come to understand what affordable housing is, so we don't get that local neighborhood pushback whenever it's proposed in a particular area. Beyond that, I think we need to work at the state level to bring down the requirements at the state for funding affordable housing to allow smaller scale affordable housing projects so that we can have them not just in large places where there's a lot of open land, but we can have them in commercial centers, and we can also have them in the Bethlehem Central School District and the Guilderland School District, in places where people can walk to services, walk to the grocery store, catch the bus to work, drive to work more easily, and be in a more central part of the community. And this is an issue that we are exploring very carefully in the comprehensive plan.
Thank you. And I'll begin with you on the next question.
Okay.
Okay, what kind of infrastructure maintenance plan for the entire town will you implement to ensure that all are provided with water, sewer, gas, electric, and broadband?
So the town does not provide natural gas service. So that's not something that's in our ballot. We also don't provide broadband, and we have found it extremely difficult to get clear information from the broadband providers where their services are. Although I will say that Bethlehem has a stricter and more inclusive broadband requirements than are required statewide. We have an active plan that is implemented by our Public Works Department for maintaining our water and sewer lines. And our crews do an amazing job maintaining that, what for them is about 400 miles of underground water and sewer lines. We are in the closing stages of completing an $18 million improvement to the Clap Road water treatment plant. That was done when the federal EPA changed the water quality standards. Our water has met all of the standards for more than a year now. So we're very successful on that front. We work very closely with the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee, our Highway Department, to maintain and improve our sidewalk network. And we have a strategic plan for repaving our roads, which our Highway Department has done an outstanding job following to keep our roads smooth. And I say that if you hit a pothole in Bethlehem, you're not on a town road.
And could you respond?
Yeah, so water and sewer in particular are very important. As we saw last March, there was a water main break in front of the middle school, which disrupted traffic and the lives of the people who live along that corridor for at least a week, if not more. And I think there's still problems going on. So I think the main thing that I would do is I would survey the water and sewer systems in the town to see which ones are the oldest and which ones are the most decayed and which ones are the most in need of repair. And then I would focus on those to be repaired immediately and quickly. We can't have another situation like the one we saw last winter when this water line broke. The problem should have been diagnosed before it ever happened, yet it wasn't. So by surveying every length of water line and sewer line in this town, hopefully we can avoid that problem again.
Oh, can I use my red card real quick?
Yes,
Because
sure.
the water, our water and sewer system are near and dear to my heart, and I'm very proud of the job that our public works crews do in maintaining them. So Paul, you'll be happy to know that the town did a comprehensive survey of dates and mapped out our water and sewer lines, maybe 5-6 years ago. So we have, or actually more than, I would say 8-10 years ago. So we have a good sense of where the water lines are and are not. The water or the sewer line that we're having trouble with in front of the Bethlehem Central Middle School was put in 1929. So the challenge is finding the resources to comprehensively replace those lines, which is mind-bogglingly expensive. But I will say that our crews do a phenomenal job of maintaining them. When there's a break, people usually have their water back on within 3 to 4 hours, and we don't have boil water advisories. Our crews do a fantastic job, and I'm so proud to support them.
Thank you. So the next question, Mr. Heiser, I'm going to begin with you. Businesses that go before Bethlehem's Planning Board and Zoning Board report that there is a lack of experience and understanding of business financing, deadlines, development procedures. What will you do to bring a broader, heterogeneous perspective to these boards?
Well, I can't pretend I'm an expert on the planning board or the requirements that are necessary to be a member of the planning board. So what I would do is I would convene a group of people together and ask them what are the areas of expertise that are required for somebody to sit on this board? Okay. That would be the first step. The second step would be, are the people on this board, are they meeting those requirements? And are they capable of making the types of decisions that the planning board makes on a weekly, monthly basis? So those are the two steps. Listening to people obviously is the first step. I'm not an expert in this area, but I do have two ears, and I use them very well. And I would certainly sit down and listen.
So our planning, and one of the great things, one of the many great things about living in Bethlehem is we have an embarrassment of riches in terms of resident expertise and skills. And the individuals that have been appointed to the planning board and to the zoning board of appeals over the years have consistently been outstanding. They've been knowledgeable about town codes. They've been knowledgeable about community interests, and they've been sticklers for expecting that when projects go in, that they're done properly and well. And I was talking to a former economic development coordinator, and I said, "What are they seeing in other towns? Where are the towns where the developers are coming in and they're just thrilled?" And she said, "The ones that don't have any zoning." So the challenge is not so much the zoning board of appeals and the planners. It's that we have high standards and we expect people to meet them. But that doesn't mean that projects have to go slowly. The Albany Port, or the Port of Albany, took the planning review process extremely seriously, and they were able to work with the planning board to move a multi-million-dollar offshore wind tower facility through the planning process to approval in a very short time frame. And they said one of the reasons that they were excited about coming here is because our planning board was so effective.
Thank you. And the next question I'll begin with Mr. Van Leuven. The town of Bethlehem has increased crime activity, such as car break-ins, vandalism, and assaults on the bike path. What do you propose to address? What do you do?
I'm going to challenge the fundamental tenet of that question. I don't think it's either fair or accurate. Our police department does an amazing job in our community. Now, do we have a lot more complaining about things, and are things being flagged much more energetically on social media? Absolutely. If you want to see writing about something negative and awful, just go to Nextdoor. It's all there waiting for you, whether it's a road rage incident or a neighbor whose dog is barking. And sometimes you'll see things where crimes have taken place. We don't live in a perfectly safe society, but Bethlehem is an incredibly safe community. And it's a safe community in large part because our police department is always there for us. And so I challenge these assertions that crime is on the rise, that it's dangerous. I heard someone calling it Hellmar, and I'm expecting someone to start saying Bethlehem at some point. These are clever sound bites, but they're not accurate representations of what our town is, and they're not respectful representations of the incredible work of our police force.
Mr. Heiser, could you address the question?
Yes. Well, I'll restate for the third time what I said in my opening statements. Since 2017, violent crime. And we're talking violent crime. We're talking assaults. We're talking armed robberies. Those types of crimes. They have gone up 54% since 2017. And that is a concern to me. Yes, by and large, this community is safe. But these indicators can't be ignored. And if this turns into a long-term trend, then we're really in trouble. I agree with Mr. Van Leuven that our police department is phenomenal. Okay? They have all my respect in the world. That's why my solution would be to have more of it. So the town has budgeted for 40 police officers, but the police department has been chronically understaffed. I believe that they're currently at 37 patrol officers right now. So 3 short of that 40 that they're budgeted for. So I think making sure our police department is fully up to staff with the appropriate number of officers that the chief has requested is the best way to address the crime issue in this town.
Thank you. And I'll begin again with you in the next question. What is your plan to help preserve farms, woodlands, and other open spaces in our town?
Well, first and foremost, I would make sure they're not being taxed out of town. I know that under the supervisor before David Van Leuven, John Clarkson, there were property taxes on large landowners in the town went up dramatically. I heard from one person whose property taxes went up $30,000 just in 1 year. So what happens, you're basically pricing people out of their property. So if you want to preserve farmland and open spaces, the worst way to do that is to tax people out of their property. So what do they end up doing? They sell the property. What happens to that property? The property gets developed. So we no longer have farmland, we no longer have open space, but rather we have land that's being developed and basically taken away from its original intended use. Thank you.
Mr. Van Leuven, please.
So I'm proud to say that over the last 3 years, we have protected more land in partnership with interested landowners than the town had done in the previous 25 years combined. And we did that by paying for it and by working in close partnership with landowners. I'll give you a few examples. We partnered with a large landowner in North Bethlehem to put a conservation easement on their property. That land, it's 41 acres, it's right off Blessing Road. It's one of the last large remaining open space parcels in North Bethlehem. It will never be protected. It's still in their ownership. They can still use it as they want. It will never be developed. We purchased 69 acres from the Normanside Country Club to create the new 147-acre Normanskill Ravines Nature Preserve. That's a park that's only 10 acres smaller than all of Elm Avenue Park. We've also created a Farms and Forests Fund to give us opportunities to raise funds and set aside funds for the purchase of land. The reality of land conservation is that if it's not protected, it's probably going to be developed. It might be developed in 5 years, it might be developed in 50 years. If we as a community want to continue to have farms and we want to continue to have green spaces in town, we need to step up and pay for it, and we need to step up and support the landowners who are managing their land in an undeveloped condition.
Yes.
Use my
Sure.
card for an
Please.
extra minute.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, so protecting open space is all fine and well, but the projects that Mr. Van Leuven has talked about, how are those funded? Well, it's through the Parkland Set-Aside Fund. How's that funded? Well, it adds as much as $2,200 to the cost of housing, because these costs are passed on to the developers. So the developers don't just merely eat the cost of the $2,200 it's added to the project, rather it gets passed on to the buyer. So we're on one hand, we're talking about let's make housing in this town affordable. On the other hand, we're saying let's add this, what's essentially a tax, to the cost of housing, which makes housing less affordable. So the two are incongruent.
Thank you. Mr. Van Leuven, I think I have to start with you.
Okay.
I almost got confused on that 1 minute extension. Okay, here's the question. Proposition 6 is a vote on funding for complete street engineering study and construction. Will you vote yes on Prop 6 and support funding for complete streets? What is your position on the 2-1-1 compromise solution for the road diet?
So the stretch of Delaware Avenue between Ellesmere Ave and the Albany City line has 3 core problems. The first is that it's dangerous for cars. We see more accidents on that stretch of road than the State Department of Transportation sees on similar roads elsewhere in the state. The second is that it's really bad for pedestrians, including children who are walking to the Ellesmere Elementary School. And the third is that it's just not good for businesses. When businesses would come to our economic development coordinator with interest in moving into town, she would say, we've got this great property for you on that stretch of Delaware Avenue. They say, no, we want to be in an area that's more walkable. So they would locate in Glenmont, or the Four Corners in Delmar, or in Slingerlands. The Proposition 6 is about going through the financial steps so that we can continue the community conversation about what the design should be, that we can do a detailed design of 3 different traffic configurations, and so that we can implement improvements to our sidewalks. If Prop 6 is approved, we'll be able to take a $2.9 million grant to do that work and to do that continued community conversation. If we vote against Prop 6, then we will lose that funding. We'll have major construction, but it's just going to replace the pipes and repave the road as it is. No sidewalk work, no safety work, and no more community conversations.
Mr. Heiser, could you respond?
I plan on voting no on Proposition 6. Voting for the proposition and for the funding for this project is tantamount to voting for the 111 plan, which is only one lane going in each direction. I think that's disastrous for a number of reasons. First reason, it's going to impact negatively the livelihoods of a number of business owners who have businesses along that corridor. Second, it's going to bottle up traffic, especially during rush hour. And when traffic's bottled up, what happens? Traffic goes to places like Bender Lane, it goes to Kentwood Avenue, streets that weren't designed to handle that volume of traffic. It's going to be dangerous for bicyclists because there are just too many curb cuts along Delaware Avenue. I understand there are 72 curb cuts on that 1.3 mile stretch of Delaware Avenue. So there are cars constantly turning in, pulling out of driveways. So that's just tailor-made for a serious collision with a bicyclist and a motorist. And Mr. Van Leuven talked about how there needs to be major work on the sidewalks. That's not true. The sewer lines were re-sleeved fairly recently, and there's no structural damage there. And the water lines run parallel to the road underneath the sidewalk.
Thank you. I'm going to start with you on this question. Okay. Real change happens at the local level. Name 2 concrete actions that you will commit to in order to strengthen relations with the other side of the political aisle.
Well, 2 things. The first is this is not about Paul Heiser. So it's not about me being town supervisor. It's about somebody who's there to listen to people. I've through my professional life, I've worked in associations. I've worked in situations where it's important to bring people together and listen to all perspectives from all sides, and that's what I plan to do here. And the key objective to remember here as being town supervisor is what's good for the town. And as long as you keep that objective in mind, it doesn't matter who you're working with, what side of the aisle you're working with, whether it's a Democrat, Republican, somebody who's not affiliated with any party, as long as your objective that you keep first and foremost is what's good for the people of this town, you're on solid ground.
So once again, I'm going to challenge the fundamental negative premise of the question, because we are not a town divided along political party lines. I hear people say that, but those people usually have an agenda that I don't particularly agree with, and that agenda is to divide the town along political lines. Happily, that is not the case. When we are appointing residents to our boards and our committees, we don't look at their political affiliations. We don't care. We look at their qualifications. We look at their interests. The only one where we look is the ethics board, because that's required by law. When I am getting calls from residents who have a concern I don't check to see what their political affiliation is. I work to help them because they're my neighbors. When our town employees are out supporting our residents, whether driving a senior to the grocery store or a doctor's appointment, or responding to a water main break, or helping with snow plowing, they're not looking at people's political affiliations. We're here to serve. And so Paul's right. The number one thing is that the town and the residents come first. And that's exactly what we do. And that's exactly why, or that's one of the key reasons why our quality of life here is so good and our town services are so outstanding.
Thank you. And Mr. Van Leuven, I'm going to begin this with you. In your view, what role do manufacturing and large-scale businesses play in the character and livability of a town like Bethlehem?
So most people don't realize that Bethlehem has a thriving manufacturing and industrial sector. If you buy the pink fiberglass bat insulation anywhere in the northeastern United States, it was made here in Bethlehem at the Owens Corning plant. There's this great business down on River Road called Air Products. They make products literally out of air. I just had a tour with the Bethlehem Chamber of Commerce, who's a great partner to the town, of the new Digifab shop down in Glenmont in the Port of Albany that is manufacturing these amazing buildings and walls, and you name it, they're making it. They're making it out of wood, they're making it out of metal. And I'm very excited that Bethlehem is going to be home to the one of the key offshore wind tower manufacturing centers for all of the state of New York. And I think it's ultimately going to be serving all of the northeastern United States. We also have one of the largest rail yards in the eastern United States. So our industrial and our manufacturing sectors are vital parts of our economy, and they're vital parts of our community. We're working to support them, and I'm very excited. We were actually just interviewing a new person for our Industrial Development Agency. That agency has a very ambitious a plan for bringing in even more businesses.
Thank you. And Mr. Heiser, could you respond?
Yeah, I agree. The manufacturing and industrial base here in town is crucially important. I talked earlier about spreading the tax burden around, and this is a great way to do it. So you entice large industry to town. What does that do? It helps spread the tax burden along, through a larger tax base. So it makes each person's individual tax burden that much less. And if we don't get these large industries to locate here, what are they going to do? They're going to go to places like Buffalo. They're going to go to places like Rochester. They're going to go to places like Malta. So we'll be missing out. They'll be locating somewhere. We just won't be benefiting from it. Also, what I thought was interesting, I was reading the Town of Bethlehem comprehensive plan update, and it said that commercial properties in town, for every $1 they pay in taxes to the town, they only use about 13 cents in services. So that seems like a pretty good bargain to me. So you get large industries to locate here. They help spread our tax burden around, yet they're not a big burden on our services and infrastructure here.
Thank you. And the next question, I'll begin with you, Mr. Heiser. Do you think the town's spending is in line with its revenue?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know the comptroller, Michael Cohen, but from all accounts, he's very well respected by everybody, people on both sides of the political spectrum and all sides of the political spectrum. But the one, and I know he has a great staff and they work hard at doing what they do, putting budgets together. There is one thing I'm concerned about with the town budgets, though, is that in 2008, at its peak, the town had 241 employees. In 2021, there are now 219 employees. So the number of employees has gone down by 22 people since 2008, which is great. I'm all in favor of a lean, mean workforce. But while the workforce is going down 9%, the property tax levy that goes to the general fund has gone up 187% over that corresponding period. And since the general fund expenditures primarily go to things like employee salaries and benefits and the like, if we're seeing a reduction in town employees, why are we seeing not a commensurate, reduction in the property tax levy?
Ms. Van Luven, please.
Yes. So I feel that our spending is very much in line with our revenues. And over the 4 years that I've been the town supervisor, all of our budgets have not only passed unanimously, including by one of the individuals that Paul is running beside, but that individual has also complimented us for coming up with such a good and careful budget. Now, one of the big challenges that most people don't realize is that for every $1 in property taxes that a resident or a business pays, the town gets 11 cents. Most of it goes to the school districts, 4 cents goes to the fire district, 4 cents goes to the library, 13 cents goes to the county, and we get 11, 12 cents of every tax dollar. So when we're talking about this tax burden, I think it's important for people to recognize that that tax burden is not being imposed on you by the town government, even though the vast majority of the services that you get are coming from your town government. But it's not the town delivering the services, it's people delivering services. We have a skeletal staff. We have more roads than ever before. We have more water, stormwater treatment systems than ever before. We have more leaf and yard waste collection than ever before. And we don't have the staff to do it easily. And so it's easy to talk about more, but if you haven't got the people, we can't do it.
And the next question, I'll give you a minute to gulp. It's for you, Ms. Van Luven. It was recently revealed that Facebook's algorithm stokes anger and division amongst their users intentionally. What will you do to help reduce any community divide that stokes?
So actually, I'm going to finish off my last question. It's not that we can't deliver the services, it's that it's becoming an increasing challenge for our limited but incredibly skilled and incredibly productive workforce. In terms of social media, we don't censor thought, and we don't censor what people type on social media. We don't have control over that. But what we can do is we can interact with each other the way that we do. We interact with each other in the grocery store. We interact with each other in the deli or the coffee shop. We see each other at school events and at sporting events. We see each other at concerts at town hall. It's these community events that bring people together to interact in person that I think are so vital to the sense of community that we have. One of the big challenges we've had, however, is obviously COVID. And we have had to pull back from so many of these vital events because of safety concerns. And I can't wait until we're able to get back to having everything in person. It would be nice to have an audience here tonight. It's a particular concern with our seniors who have a tendency to be more isolated, and as such we see higher depression rates. And so our senior services department is making special efforts to serve those residents to keep them comfortable. But in terms of social media, unfortunately, we don't control it.
Yeah, social media platforms like Facebook, unfortunately, it's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it's a great way to communicate with people. I've been able to reconnect with old friends that I haven't seen in decades. So it's a godsend when it comes to reconnecting with other people. The other side of that sword is it's a great way to be a keyboard warrior and to anonymously attack people without any of the repercussions that would normally happen if you were in a one-on-one situation. But unfortunately, we can't control that, nor would I want to. I wouldn't want to censor anybody from saying anything. And I think really the perception is that there are more of these quote-unquote keyboard warriors than there really are. I think the perception is that there are just armies of people out there who just want to do nothing but attack people, and they have all this ill will built up, and they can't wait to unleash it on the world. And I don't think that's true. And I think You get a situation like Facebook, and you see a few negative comments, and you think the whole world is like that, and I just simply don't agree with that.
And I'll begin with you, Mr. Heiser, on the next one, which comes kind of late in our discussion, which is interesting. What is your professional background that prepares you for the position of Town of Bethlehem Supervisor?
Okay, I will share my background, and I'll let voters decide what they think of it. So I have experience in both the public and private sectors. Currently, I am the senior research analyst for the New York State School Boards Association. I've been in this position for almost 23 years now. And in this position, so I work for an association. One of the key things to understand about an association is we have a membership. It's an association of people. So customer service is paramount when you work in an association. So I have a lot of experience in reaching out to people, pleasing people, providing good customer service. Prior to this position, I worked as a legislative analyst for a former state senator who represented Columbia and Dutchess counties. So I have experience in the legislative and policy and political realms as well. I also have experience in the private sector. I was a customer service representative for the old Albany Savings Bank, for you who remember the Albany Savings Bank. So again, I was in a position where I had to reach out to the customer and to satisfy the customer and provide good customer service. And I was also, in a former life, the co-manager of a very successful fitness club in Albany. I was a personal instructor, fitness instructor, and I was a co-manager.
Mr. Van Loon.
So really, all since college, and through much of my career, I've led kind of a double life. As an undergraduate, one of my majors was Arctic and Alpine ecology, and I did my field research 130 miles north of the Arctic Circle, and so science was my thing. But at the same time, I was also very involved in the college community. In my senior year at Middlebury, I was the president of the Student Government Association. And through my career working with the Nature Conservancy and state agencies focused on environmental issues, I always had my responsibilities involved a lot of strategic thinking, a lot of strategic planning, and a lot of leading of teams, managing budgets. What do you do as the town supervisor? You manage budgets, you work strategically, you listen and you engage. But most importantly, you lead a very strong team of people. My philosophy as an administrator has always been that my job is to clear the politics and find the resources so that brilliant people can do brilliant work. And that's what I see here in our town government. Our departments are incredibly strong, and they are staffed with creative, innovative people who are dedicated to delivering services, even when they have to drop merit certificates through a window to a couple because of COVID restrictions. We have a great team, and I'm proud to lead them.
I'm looking over the last few questions that have been submitted, and some of them overlap with some earlier ones, but they have been submitted, so I will give you an opportunity to elaborate if they have coincided with something earlier. Mr. Van Loon, the next question says, how would you address the widespread increasing traffic congestion in the town of Bethlehem beyond the Delaware Avenue corridor and Glenmont?
So again, I'm going to push back on the negative phrasing of this question. We do have traffic issues in Bethlehem, but I'm going to challenge the notion that we have horrible congestion. And having lived north of Boston for 9 years, I can tell you what horrible congestion looks like. We do have backups, we do have delays, and in the areas where it's serious, we're taking steps to address it. We are in the midst of the Glenmont Roundabout project, and that is to take one of our most congested intersections and make it flow more smoothly. Our police department works on traffic enforcement around town to help guide speeds. The Delaware Avenue Complete Streets project, I think, will be a positive because it will slow cars down. Yeah, you won't be able to get through as quickly, but it will be better for the local businesses and safer for everyone involved. The other thing that we can do to manage traffic is to protect green spaces, because every time you have a new development go in, what does it bring? It brings a whole bunch of
because that's going to have spillover effects. So that gets narrowed down, so you have congestion there, and then it kind of snakes its way up Delaware Avenue toward the Four Corners. So I think, number one, I think the planned 111 road diet would just add to the congestion, not just on that particular corridor, but through other parts of town as well. And as I mentioned before, if people are bottled up on Delaware Avenue, what are they going to do? They're going to go to Kenwood Avenue. They're going to go to Bender Lane. So you're going to see congestion there. Roads that aren't necessarily equipped to handle that volume of traffic. Another thing I would do is I would make the timing of the traffic signals better, so that people are idling at traffic lights for a less period of time. Every day I go to work, I go down Kenwood Avenue by the Little League Park, and I wait at the light to get onto Route 32, and I just sit there and sit there and sit there. It could be 6 in the morning, it's completely pitch black, not a car in sight, but I sit there for maybe a minute, minute and a half at a time, waiting for the light to turn. So traffic light signal coordination, that could be improved.
Please tell me you've got a question in there about climate change.
It's
the biggest issue we have as a country.
I am
as a
trying
world.
very hard to create questions, but I am a visitor to your community. These have been submitted by the community as a whole.
Okay.
So
Sorry about that.
there are one or two overlap questions which would just be repetitive. So I have to say, I always love to come to Bethlehem. The community is so committed. The citizenship works so hard. I'm sure many people will be sorry they couldn't be here tonight, but they are watching. So I would just like at this time to ask each of the candidates to think about what their final statement would be. And I would like to call upon Mr. Van Leuven to make the final statement for tonight.
So I go first?
Yes, you do.
Okay. So I'm David Van Leuven. I'm your town supervisor, and I'm running so hard to serve another term as town supervisor because I love this town and I love this job. Bethlehem is a wonderful place to live, and we truly are one Bethlehem. We may not always agree on issues, but we have neighbors who are good people, community groups who care, and parks, coffee shops, churches, and more where we can be reminded that we actually have more in common than what we see on social media. This isn't to say that everything is perfect in town. Believe me, I hear my fair share of complaints, but I also see our community coming together and working together on so many things. I love seeing families playing on the playground when I walk into town hall. I'm happy to see volunteer drivers setting out to take older residents to doctor's appointments. I'm proud to see our town workers laying asphalt even on brutally hot days and fixing broken water mains even on cold ones. I have been honored to serve as town supervisor of this wonderful community for the last 4 years, and when you go to the polls, I hope that you will trust me to serve and work for you for another term. Be kind, be well, and stay safe.
I once again want to thank the League of Women Voters of Albany County and the Spotlight for sponsoring this forum, and for Mr. Van Leuven for being here with me to discuss these issues. As I said in my opening statement, I'm a lifelong resident of this town. I love this town to death. And I've had chances to move away, to go other places, to take jobs elsewhere. And I always seem to return here because this is where home is. This is where my heart is. This is where my family are. This is where my friends are. And I've made so many friends in this community. I've accumulated so many great memories. Just being able to go to the dive pool again this summer was phenomenal after not having that for 2 years. So just in closing, when you go to the polls on November 2nd, or if you vote early, vote for me. I believe I can do a great job. And I look forward to seeing you when I go door to door.
I'd like to thank both candidates. Again, it's a pleasure to come to Bethlehem. I did neglect to say this, I fear. The way the ballot is this year, on the back of the ballot, there will be some proposals. And so don't go without checking the back because the state has 5 and there's a 6th one that just is for the town of Bethlehem. It has been my pleasure to be here. The Chamber of Commerce, again, I thank you for help sponsoring us, and I congratulate both of you.